In the distant future, humanity had spread across the stars, but there were still mysteries lurking in the vast darkness of space. One day, a deep space exploration ship called the Vanguard picked up a strange signal from a planet no one had ever noticed before. The signal was faint, but there was something about it that felt different. Something ancient. The crew of the Vanguard couldn't resist the urge to investigate, so they set course for the unknown world. As they entered the atmosphere, the ship's sensors went wild. Unusual readings flooded the screen's energy patterns, complex structures, and signs of something once alive. They had landed on a planet long forgotten. The surface was barren, covered in dust and strange ruins that spoke of a civilization that had vanished without a trace. But as the team ventured deeper into the planet's core, they stumbled upon a massive structure hidden beneath the ground. The door to the structure was large and imposing, with strange symbols carved into it. And it was open. Are we really doing this? Captain Jameson's voice crackled over the comms. He knew that exploring this ancient place was risky, but curiosity always pulled at humanity like a magnet. His team, a mix of engineers, scientists, and soldiers, was ready. Together, they made their way inside. The air was thick with dust, and the walls were lined with strange glowing symbols. The deeper they went, the more intense the feeling became that this was not just a ruin. This was something alive. The team could feel it. It was watching them. In the heart of the structure, they discovered what appeared to be a control room, its console still glowing dimly. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The buttons were unfamiliar, the screen flickered with codes that no one could understand. But something strange happened when Lieutenant Carter, a linguist, touched one of the glowing symbols. The screen blinked, then shifted, showing an image. It was a map of the galaxy, but with one key difference: a strange red mark on the edge, a location that no one recognized. "Is this where they came from?" Carter asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It's possible," replied Dr. Zhang, the team scientist. "This could be the map of the curators the ancient race believed to have shaped the galaxy." The curators were a legend. Stories had been passed down through the ages of an advanced species that once held unimaginable power. But no one knew what happened to them. They vanished without a trace, and over time, they were forgotten. Suddenly, the entire room shook. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the lights flickered. The team scrambled, confused, unsure of what was happening. Then, without warning, a voice echoed through the room. It was deep, resonating through the walls. "Welcome, children of the stars. You have awakened us." The team froze. The voice came from nowhere, yet it felt as if it surrounded them. It wasn't a machine or a computer, it was something alive. The screen flickered again, showing them a holographic image of a tall, humanoid figure. Its face was covered in shadows, but its eyes glowed brightly. It was one of the curators. "We have been waiting," the voice continued. "You have unlocked the path to our legacy, but you must prove yourself worthy." Before anyone could respond, the room began to change. The walls shifted, and strange symbols appeared on the floor. The team found themselves standing in a vast, open arena, an area that looked like a cross between a testing ground and a battlefield. The curator's voice spoke again, this time with an edge of authority. "To gain what you seek, you must complete the trials. Fail, and the planet will be your tomb." Panic set in. The crew had no idea what the trials were or what they were about to face. But they knew one thing: they had no choice. If they didn't succeed, they would be trapped here forever, with no way of returning to their ship or to civilization. The trials began immediately. Each team member was placed in separate, shifting environments, facing tests of strength, intelligence, and survival. The first trial was a battle against shadow-like creatures that emerged from the walls. They fought with everything they had, using their weapons and knowledge to stay alive. But it wasn't enough. These creatures were unlike anything they had ever encountered: fast, ruthless, and deadly. Captain Jameson was the first to fall, his body swallowed by the shadows. The others were left in shock, but they didn't have time to mourn. The trial was not over. They had to keep fighting, and they had to do it fast. Hours passed. The team grew weaker, their resolve starting to crack. But Lieutenant Carter, driven by his curiosity, was determined to push forward. He knew that they had to uncover the secrets hidden in this place, not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. If the curators truly were behind the technology that shaped the galaxy, they would hold the key to unimaginable power. And then, as they reached the final trial, the truth was revealed. The curators had not vanished. They had chosen to leave humanity a test, a trial to determine whether humans were worthy to inherit their knowledge and power. If the humans passed, they would gain access to secrets that could change the future of the galaxy. But if they failed, the curators would disappear once again, and humanity would be left in the dark forever. With everything on the line, the crew of the Vanguard fought through their final trial and uncovered the truth. The curators, they learned, had been watching, waiting for humanity to prove itself. And now they had. The legacy of the curators was not lost. It was waiting, ready to be claimed. But humanity would have to be careful. Power, after all, was never without a cost. In the year 2197, humanity had spread across the stars. Cities on Mars, colonies on the moons of Jupiter, and trade routes across distant galaxies had become part of daily life. But for all their progress, humans had always wondered about the past, about the ancient races that once ruled the galaxy before them. And in the heart of the universe, there was one name that had never been forgotten: the Curators. The Curators were a mysterious, almost mythical race, believed to have once shaped the galaxy with their vast knowledge and advanced technology. But they had vanished centuries ago, leaving only traces of their existence behind. Some said they were just legends, but others believed they were still out there, watching. One day, an unexpected message reached Earth. It wasn't a signal from an alien species or a distant planet. It was a message from the Curators themselves. The message was simple, but chilling. The time has come. Captain Sarah Carter, the leader of the starbound exploration ship, was one of the first to respond. Her team of elite explorers had been trained for any situation, but this was unlike anything they had prepared for. The message came from a distant planet, deep within the uncharted regions of space. The coordinates led to a place no human had ever ventured before, a planet hidden behind a veil of cosmic dust. It was there, the Curators had said, that humanity would find the answers they sought. As Starbound approached the mysterious planet, the crew could feel the weight of the situation. No one knew what they would find. Would they finally meet the Curators? Or would they walk into a trap set by an ancient power? The ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, and the landscape that greeted them was unlike anything they had seen before. Vast cities, now abandoned, stood in silence, covered in layers of dust. Towering structures that seemed to touch the sky, built with materials beyond human understanding, crumbled in the wind. The planet was a graveyard of a once great civilization. But as the crew stepped onto the surface, something stirred. They felt it in the air, a presence, unseen but undeniable. It was as though the planet itself was alive, watching them, waiting for them to make their next move. They followed the coordinates from the message to a large structure in the center of the planet, its design too perfect, too deliberate to be natural. Inside, the crew discovered a massive chamber, its walls lined with strange symbols and glowing lights. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it rested a holographic map of the galaxy, filled with strange markings. But what caught their attention was the central point of the map: Earth. A glowing symbol hovered over the planet, pulsing in time with their heartbeats. Before they could examine it further, the room shuddered. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome, children of the stars. You have come to claim what was once ours." The crew froze. The voice wasn't just a recording, it was alive. The Curators had returned. "We have waited," the voice continued. "The galaxy has changed. The time for your trials has come." The map on the pedestal flickered, and suddenly the room was filled with a dazzling light. The walls disappeared, and the crew found themselves standing in an unfamiliar place, an arena, vast and strange. The air was thick with tension. "You will face the trials of the Curators," the voice boomed. "Fail, and the galaxy will remain in chaos. Succeed, and you will inherit the knowledge of the Ancient One." The crew had no choice but to move forward. They were in the heart of the curator's domain now, and they had no idea what the trials would involve. The first trial was a test of intelligence. The room around them shifted, forming puzzles and challenges that tested their mind. Complex equations, alien languages, and impossible mazes filled the air, each more difficult than the last. But Captain Carter, with her quick thinking and the support of her team, led them through. They solved the puzzles, unlocked the codes, and passed the first test. The second trial was a test of strength. The crew was thrown into a vast, shifting landscape. One moment, they were in a desert, the next in a jungle, and then on a battlefield surrounded by hostile creatures. Each environment tested their physical endurance, but the crew fought with all their might. They had to rely on their training, their teamwork, and their will to survive. Many were injured, but no one was left behind. By the time they reached the final trial, they were exhausted. The last test was the most dangerous: survival. The crew was placed in a dark, shifting maze, where the walls closed in on them, and strange creatures stalked them from the shadows. They had to find their way out before the maze consumed them. But as they made their way through, they discovered something unexpected: an ancient message hidden in the walls of the maze. "You are the heirs of the curators. The knowledge you seek is yours to take. But beware. It is not without consequence." With that warning echoing in their minds, the crew finally emerged from the maze, bruised but victorious. The voice of the curator spoke again, this time with a hint of respect. "You have passed our trials. The knowledge of the curators is now yours to claim. But remember, the power you seek is not without its cost. The galaxy has changed, and so must you." As the crew stood before the pedestal, the map of the galaxy began to glow brighter. Information poured into their minds: secrets of the universe, ancient technologies, and the true history of the galaxy. They had won the trials, but they knew that the power they had unlocked came with responsibility. The curators had risen once more, not to conquer, but to guide. And humanity, now holding the keys to the galaxy's past, was ready to face the challenges of the future. But they also knew one thing: nothing was ever truly free, and the price of power was always high. In the year 2250, humanity had spread its reach far beyond Earth. Colonies flourished on Mars, the moons of Saturn, and even distant star systems. But for all their advancements, there were still parts of space that were unexplored, places where the unknown lurked, waiting to be discovered. And then, out of nowhere, a strange signal was intercepted, sending ripples of excitement through the galaxy. The signal came from a region of space known as the Dark Zone. It was a place where no human had ever ventured, a place of dead stars and endless darkness. But the message was clear: find the shadows. Captain Alara Hayes of the Deep Space Exploration ship, the Horizon, was one of the first to respond. She had heard the rumors of the shadows, an ancient force that some believed to be the remains of an advanced, long-lost civilization. Most dismissed the shadows as just another legend. But Alara knew better. The signal was real, and it was a call to something greater than anything humanity had ever encountered. The crew of the Horizon set course for the Dark Zone. As they traveled deeper into the unknown, the ship's systems began to malfunction. Lights flickered, strange noises echoed through the halls, and the ship's AI started behaving oddly. It was as if something unseen was playing with them, watching their every move. When they finally arrived at the source of the signal, the crew couldn't believe their eyes. There, floating in the endless void, was a massive structure, one that seemed to defy all logic. It was not a space station, nor was it a ship. It was something older, something that seemed to have been carved from the very fabric of space itself. The structure was dark, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. "This is it," Captain Hayes said, her voice a mix of awe and fear. "We found it." As the ship approached the structure, the atmosphere grew heavier. A strange pull seemed to draw them in, as if the very fabric of space around the structure was warping. The crew was on edge, but they had no choice but to dock. They had to uncover what lay within. The air inside the structure was thick with dust, and the walls were covered in symbols and carvings that no one recognized. It felt ancient, yet the technology embedded within it was far beyond anything humans had ever seen. The walls seemed to hum, almost alive with energy, as though the structure itself was breathing. "Stay close," Captain Hayes ordered. "And keep your comms open. We don't know what we're dealing with here." They moved through the dark halls, their flashlights casting long shadows on the walls. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling became. It was as though something was watching them, following their every step. The hairs on the back of Alora's neck stood up. Suddenly, the lights flickered out. The crew froze, their hearts pounding in the darkness. A strange noise echoed through the halls, a low, whispering sound that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Did you hear that?" Lieutenant Ray, the ship's communications officer, whispered. Before anyone could answer, a figure appeared in front of them, moving in and out of the shadows. It was tall, its shape barely visible in the darkness, but its eyes glowed a faint, unnatural blue. The figure didn't speak, it simply watched them, its presence heavy with unspoken knowledge. The crew stood frozen, unsure whether to run or confront the being before them. But then, the figure spoke, its voice like 1,000 whispers woven together. "Why have you come?" it asked, its tone cold and distant, yet somehow filled with authority. "You seek the shadows, but do you truly understand what you seek?" Captain Hayes stepped forward, trying to mask her fear with determination. "We followed the signal. We want to understand who you are and why you are here." The figure's glowing eyes seemed to pierce through her, reading her very soul. "You are not the first to come. Many before you have sought the shadows, only to be lost to time. The shadows are not what you believe. They are not just a power, they are a force that binds the galaxy together. And they will not be controlled." The air grew colder as the figure moved closer, and the shadows around them seemed to come alive, swirling in impossible patterns. The crew could feel the temperature drop, their breaths visible in the freezing air. "Then what are the shadows?" Captain Hayes asked, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "They are the remnants of an ancient race beings who once ruled this galaxy. They built the foundations of all civilizations, guiding them in the dark. But their power was not meant for the living. It is a force that corrupts, that twists reality. You were not meant to find it." Before Alora could speak, the figure raised a hand, and the shadows around them thickened, closing in like a storm. "Leave now," it warned, "before it is too late." But something deep within Alara refused to back down. The shadows had called them here for a reason. They couldn't leave without understanding what lay hidden in this place. "We don't fear the unknown," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "We came for the truth." With a sharp motion, the figure vanished into the shadows, and the room fell silent. The crew was left standing in the cold darkness, but something had changed. The air felt heavier, charged with an energy they couldn't comprehend. Then, suddenly, the walls around them began to shift. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. It was as if the structure was coming alive, reacting to their defiance. The shadows were watching them, but now they weren't just hiding in the dark. They were guiding them, drawing them deeper into the heart of the structure. Captain Hayes knew one thing for certain: they had crossed a line. The shadows had noticed them, and they would not stop until the crew uncovered the secrets hidden within. But the deeper they went, the more dangerous it became. The shadows were not their allies, but they would not let them turn back now. They were being led by shadows, and there was no way out. The galaxy was vast, filled with wonders and dangers beyond imagination. In the year 2290, humanity had uncovered countless secrets of the universe. But one mystery had always eluded them, the curators. A race of beings so ancient and powerful that their very name had become a legend. It was said they once shaped the galaxy with their knowledge, leaving behind incredible technologies and strange artifacts. But they had disappeared, vanishing without a trace, leaving only whispers of their existence. Then, a signal arrived. .it was faint at first, barely a flicker among the stars, but it was enough to catch the attention of Captain Leo Brannigan and the crew of the exploration ship Endeavour. The message was clear: the trial awaits. It was an invitation or perhaps a challenge coming from the heart of the galaxy. The coordinates led to a planet in the farthest reaches of space, one that had never been charted before. No one had ever dared to venture there. But the crew of Endeavor was different. They had faced countless dangers, and this was an opportunity they couldn't pass up. They set course for the unknown planet, their minds filled with questions. What was this trial? Who had sent the message? And what did it mean for humanity's future? As the ship approached the planet's atmosphere, the crew noticed something odd. The planet was cloaked in a thick mist, unlike any they had seen before. The sensors malfunctioned, and the view screens flickered. It felt as though the very air around the planet was alive, watching them. But there was no turning back now. They had come too far. The Endeavor descended toward the surface, its engines roaring as they cut through the thick fog. The planet's surface was rocky, barren, and dark, with strange structures rising from the ground ruins of an ancient civilization. As they landed, the crew stepped out into the unknown, their footsteps echoing on the cold, hard ground. This place. It's like a tomb, said Lieutenant Mira, her voice tense with unease. Captain Brannigan nodded. Stay alert. Whatever the curators left behind, we need to find it. The crew moved cautiously toward a massive stone structure that loomed in the distance. It was the largest of the ruins they had seen, and its walls were covered in intricate carvings and symbols that seemed to pulse with energy. As they entered, the air grew thick with an oppressive silence. The walls seemed to close in on them, and strange shadows moved at the edges of their vision. Inside, they found a circular chamber, its walls lined with more carvings. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and atop it rested a single object, a black crystal, its surface smooth and reflective. The moment they laid eyes on it, the entire room seemed to come alive. The carvings on the walls glowed, and a low hum filled the air. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the chamber, its source impossible to locate. Welcome, seekers of the curators. You have passed the first trial. The crew froze. The voice wasn't human. It wasn't even of this world. It was ancient, powerful, and it seemed to resonate with the very fabric of the chamber itself. You will now face the second trial, the voice continued. Only those who prove themselves worthy will be granted the knowledge of the curators. Fail, and you will be lost to time, just as the others before you. The crystal on the pedestal began to glow brighter, casting eerie shadows across the room. Then, without warning, the floor beneath their feet opened, revealing a vast pit below. The crew found themselves standing on a narrow ledge, surrounded by darkness. We must cross, Captain Brannigan said, his voice steady despite the rising tension. We have no choice. As they began to make their way across the ledge, the shadows around them seemed to shift. Strange, ghostly figures appeared in the darkness, their faces twisted in expressions of anguish. They whispered in a language none of the crew could understand, their voices growing louder and more frantic as they neared. Lieutenant Mira reached out, trying to steady herself on the narrow ledge. But the moment her fingers brushed the stone, a figure lunged at her from the shadows. She screamed, but Captain Brannigan acted quickly, pulling her back just in time. Keep moving, he shouted. The crew pressed forward, their hearts pounding as the whispers grew louder. The shadows seemed to stretch and twist, taking on monstrous shapes that reached for them. It was as if the very air was alive, trying to drag them into the darkness. Finally, they reached the other side of the pit, breathless and shaken. But their trial was far from over. The voice returned, its tone cold and emotionless. You have passed the second trial. But there is one that will determine whether you are worthy of the curator's knowledge. A door opened before them, leading into a vast chamber. In the center of the room stood a large, glowing orb, its light flickering like a heartbeat. The crew approached cautiously, their eyes fixed on the orb. It pulsed with energy, and as they drew nearer, they could feel its power radiating through the room. You must choose, the voice said. The orb will grant you the knowledge of the curators, but you must decide who among you will bear the burden. Only one can receive the power. The rest will be left behind. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. They had come so far, but now they were faced with an impossible choice. Who would take the knowledge of the curators? Who would bear the weight of their ancient power? Captain Brannigan stepped forward, his mind racing. The others watched him, waiting for his decision. In the silence, the orb's pulse grew faster, more urgent. Finally, Brannigan spoke. "I will take the knowledge." Before anyone could protest, the orb's light engulfed him. The others watched in awe as his body shimmered, his form dissolving into the energy. For a moment, the room was still. Then, as quickly as it had started, the light vanished. Captain Brannigan stood before them, but something was different. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and his expression was distant. "You've changed," Lieutenant Mira whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Brannigan turned toward her, a faint smile on his lips. "I've seen the future. I know what the curators left behind. And now, I will guide humanity." The crew stood in stunned silence, realizing that they had not just passed the trial, they had unlocked something far greater. But at what cost? The curator's knowledge was now in Brannigan's mind, and with it came power, but also a terrible responsibility. What they had uncovered would change the galaxy forever. The stars had always whispered their secrets to those who listened closely. But some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. In the year 2312, humanity's reach had stretched far beyond Earth, colonizing distant worlds and uncovering ancient ruins. Yet one place remained untouched, the abandoned world of Xeros. It was a place shrouded in mystery and fear, a place that no one had dared to visit for centuries. That was until Captain Zara Winters and her crew aboard the Vanguard received a strange transmission. It was faint, barely more than a whisper across the void, but it was enough to catch their attention. The message was simple: find us on Xeros. No one knew who sent it. No one knew what it meant. But Zara was determined to find out. Xeros was a dead planet, its surface scorched and cracked, long abandoned by the beings who once lived there. It had been a thriving world, teeming with life, until something happened. Some said it was a natural disaster, others whispered of a forgotten war. But the truth had never been uncovered. The Vanguard set course for Xeros, and as they neared the planet, an uneasy silence settled over the crew. The planet's atmosphere was thick with dust, casting an eerie orange glow over the barren surface. The sensors were malfunctioning, the data coming through garbled and unclear. Something was wrong. Something was blocking their way. "Prepare for landing," Captain Winters ordered, her voice steady but laced with tension. "We need to find out who sent that message." The crew descended toward the planet, the Vanguard shaking as it entered the atmosphere. Outside, the landscape stretched endlessly, ruins of ancient cities, half buried in the dust. It was as if time had forgotten this place. The ship landed in a desolate plain, the ground cracked and uneven. The crew stepped out, their boots crunching on the dry earth. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the occasional distant rumble of shifting debris. Zara led her team forward, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. They approached a massive structure that towered over them, its once grand design now weathered and decayed. The building was like nothing they had ever seen, ancient, yet strangely advanced. It pulsed with an energy that hummed in the air, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. "This is it," Zara said. "The source of the message. Let's see what we're dealing with." As they entered the structure, the temperature dropped, and the air grew colder with each step. The walls were lined with strange symbols, their meaning lost to time. But there was something more unsettling, something that chilled Zara to the bone. The walls seemed to move, as if they were breathing, shifting ever so slightly. "This place feels alive," Lieutenant Kieran said, his voice low. "It's like the structure is watching us." Zara nodded, her instincts telling her they were not alone. "Keep your eyes open. We're not alone here." As they moved deeper into the structure, the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, moving of their own accord. The walls began to hum, and faint whispers filled the air, barely audible but growing louder with each step. The crew halted, looking around in confusion. Then, from the darkness, a figure emerged. It was tall and gaunt, its body shrouded in tattered robes that seemed to float rather than move with its form. Its face was hidden, obscured by a veil of shadow, but its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. It stepped forward with a slow, deliberate pace, its presence sending a wave of unease through the crew. The figure spoke, its voice a soft, eerie whisper that seemed to echo from all directions at once. "Why have you come?" Captain Zara stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest, but her voice unwavering. "We received a message. A call for help. We came to find you." The figure tilted its head, as if considering her words. "Help?" It repeated. "You seek the Lost Ones?" Zara's blood ran cold. The Lost Ones legend had it that these beings were once the rulers of Xeros, a race of highly advanced beings who had vanished without a trace. Some believed they had transcended to another plane of existence. Others thought they had been destroyed. But Zara had never believed the myths. She was determined to uncover the truth. "Yes," Zara said. "We seek the Lost Ones. We need to understand what happened here." The figure's eyes seemed to gleam with ancient knowledge. "The Lost Ones are not what you think. They did not vanish. They were forgotten. They are the ones who left the message. But they do not wish to be found." A chill swept through the crew as the figure's words sank in. Something was wrong. The message had been a trap, a lure to bring them here. But why? "You were not meant to discover this," the figure whispered, its voice trembling with a hidden threat. "The echoes of the Lost Ones are not meant for the living." The ground beneath their feet suddenly shook, and the structure groaned as if it was coming to life. The walls shifted violently, and the whispers grew louder, now more like screams. The figure began to fade, its form dissolving into shadow as it spoke one final word. "Run." Zara grabbed her crew, pulling them toward the exit as the building shook violently around them. The shadows seemed to close in, blocking their path. The crew scrambled, their hearts pounding, as the entire structure began to collapse. It was as if the planet itself was rejecting them, trying to bury the secrets of the Lost Ones forever. They barely made it back to the ship, the Vanguard shaking under the strain of the energy blast that sent them soaring into the sky. As they ascended into the void, Zara looked down at the dying planet below, her mind racing. What had they uncovered? What had they truly come to find? The message, the Lost Ones, they had been a warning that they were not meant to know the truth. And yet, despite everything, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that the Lost Ones were still out there watching, waiting, ready to reveal the final secret. The echoes of the Lost Ones would not remain silent for long.